Okay, good morning. We are continuing Yoreh Deah Kuf Chaf Aleph, and today we're continuing with Seif Daled. Seif Daled. Okay, we already said for all these halachos, it's good to review also halachos Pesach. Daled Machavat shemitagnin ba. Now, here you have a pan that you typically fry with. So there's oil in there. Afapi shele inyan chametz b'Pesach daila behagala inyan shari surim tzricha libun. So when it comes to chametz with Pesach, all you need to do is you just do hagala. But when it comes to if you want to kosher it because it became treif, then you have to actually do libun. Happens to be really the case is you're dealing with this frying pan that typically always has oil in there. It has a din of bishul, of cooking. And so therefore, all you really need to do is have hagala. But there's a machloket rishonim being the Rosh and the Rashba. Do we consider it a case of eish, or do we consider it a case of a pot? With the water, because many times there's not enough oil there. The oil doesn't disperse all over, the oil runs out, sometimes it's not all over the place. So do we consider it as bishul, or do we consider it as tzli? Really, that's the question. And so the Tzemachloket Rishonim, the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber is pretty much machriya, that when it comes to Hilchos Pesach, then he says Hagala is good enough. We could be Meko like the Ikar opinion, which is the Rosh, the Gra as well brings it. Now, normally the Shulchan Aruch, we paskin that chametz actually is, we don't consider it usually hetera bala, we consider it isur bala, but since it's a machloket, the Rosh and the Rashba, you put the two together, he's Meko. Okay. But when it's an Isser Bala, it's for sure Aser, and okay. When it's a for sure Isura Bala, then which is Treif, so then he's Machmer. That's how he's Machriya. Now, okay, but basically there's a discussion exactly what is the thinking behind the Beis Yosef, and what's another nafkamina for us is basar b'chalav. Basar b'chalav, before it's cooked, if you want to switch from a meat pot to a milchik pot and vice versa, everyone agrees that's hetera bala. There's no machlokas on that. So if you want to change a frying pan that typically has oil in there when you use it, rov tashmisho, and now you want to switch it from meat to milk, or vice versa, is it okay lechatchila to only do hagala, or do you actually need to do libun, burning? Okay, then we're talking about libun chamor. Okay, so it happens to be a machlokas. If I understand correctly, the Shach and the Aruch HaShulchan say one should be machmer for basar b'chalav. Rabbi Akiva Eger is Meko, and Psakim and Chuvas discusses it. It's a whole discussion, but so it partially depends on if you're switching it over from meat to milk with basar b'chalav, if it's a ben yomo or not. You go after rov tashmisho, and it's a discussion among the achronim. So we'll leave it like that. If it's lechatchila, okay to use hagala to switch from basar b'chalav or not. And just as an aside, there is the Magen Avraham writes that the minhag is it's aser lechatchila just on a daily basis, or even not on a daily basis, to switch over your dishes from meat to milk, because it can lead to a problem. It can lead to people, if you allow them once in a while to switch it from meat to milk, then they may do it on a regular basis, and dishes are going to get mixed up, and it's going to be a problem. So the Magen Avraham quotes that, and interesting, the Aruch HaShulchan writes that there is no problem, there's no minhag, there's no gzeira against switching your dishes from meat to milk when you want to. The Mishnah Brura quotes the Chasam Sofer that says it's mutter lechatchila, when you're koshering them for Pesach. If you're going to want to switch your dishes from meat to milk, so at least do it during when you're going to kosher it for Pesach, and then since you're koshering it for Pesach and the minhag is to be mekel for Pesach, then you can lechatchila switch it from meat to milk for all year as well. Anyways, in cases of b'diavad, b'shat adchak, many are mekel. Okay, let's go on to hey, im higel kli hatzarich libun. Now, let's say you have a pot, or it's a dish, it's a dish that in order to kosher it, it became treif through eish, and so now it needs libun to kosher it. But in the meantime, you want to use it just for hot liquids with not directly on the fire. So, but it doesn't matter. Asur lishtamish bo b'chamin afilu shelo ayedei ha'esh. Even though you don't want to use it on the fire, when heated it up without the fire, or we're talking about maybe just it's a bishul issue, so you want to just kosher it in the meantime through Hagala. And then before you use it on the fire, on the grill, or in the oven, then you'll kosher it appropriately when the time comes. But in the meantime, you just want to use it through, it became treif through eish, and in the meantime, you want to just do Hagala and use it not on the fire, or not direct heat. Okay, so can you do such a thing? It's asr, because it be absorbed, since it became treif through eish, it absorbed through eish, and there's no way to get it out completely, halachically, unless you do it with libun, and even if you try and do Hagala, it's going to stay in there. So even though you're using it now only off the fire, only with liquid, since there is still treif in there, it will continue to seep out when you use it with any kind of heat. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Shema yiflot, so therefore it's 100% aseh. Because we assume part of it will come out at some point, and it's aseh. Okay? Haga. Haval. Mutter lihishtamish bo tsonin. But you're allowed to use it with cold, because it's going to seep out, even though you did Hagala, it's not enough. So when it gets hot, it's going to seep out, because it became treif through eish. But if you're only going to use it with cold, there's no transfer. There's never a transfer when it's only cold. Afilu lechatchila. You can use it even lechatchila with cold, ayidei hadacha v'shifshuf heitev. If you make sure you clean it well. V'kol shekein b'kli shetzarich hagala. Certainly if it only needs hagala. But v'davka b'derech arai. The Ramah points out, but you can only use this on a one-off, one day, once in a while. On a very, very infrequent basis, not on a regular basis, right? Once a week, I think, is considered regular. Kegon, shu bebeit hagoy. You ended up in a goy's house. You're on a vacation, and you're in a hotel. You open up the cabinet, and they have dishes for you. So there, you see, according to the Ramah, it's mutter lechatchila to use them for cold. Only make sure it's completely clean, and then you can use it for cold. Or b'diavad, or it's in the case of b'diavad. It's in your own kitchen, your friend's kitchen, and by mistake, you used it for cold. So you can keep drinking from it. You don't have to spill it out. Okay. But if you want to do it on a regular basis, yesh machmirin. So many are machmir, not to be using it even cold. V'omrim de'afil lishtamish batzonin tzarich hagala libun. And even to use it for cold, there's no transfer. So obviously, mi'ikar adin, there's no problem. But it's a chumrah that we keep, that we don't use it at all, right, on a regular basis, unless you do what's necessary to kosher it. Why? Because if you start using it in the kitchen when it's the wrong basar b'chalav, or it's not kosher, whatever the situation is, and you do it on a regular basis, it's very easy for at some time you start using it with hot. And that is, all right, and you could also forget to kosher it forever. V'hachi nohagin, and this is the minhag. Okay. V'afilu kelim shetashmishan betzonen, im yesh Lachush shechama bo yain kagon klei chesef noagin lahagil. Now, even if it's kalim that you normally use it for cold, but it's a case where you're worried maybe they warmed it up. Let's say they had non-kosher wine and for their klei kesef. So therefore, the minhag is to do hagala, and this way you avoid the possibility. Ve'ein l'shanos, and one should not change the minhag. Right? This is a bit of a chumrah because it's not likely, but this is what we should do. And it's not rov tashmisha. Very good. Va'afilu tevot v'shulchanot hanichim min hagoyim noagim lahagel. Now, tabletops that we take from the goyim, the minhag is we also do hagala. Shema nishbechu aleihem chamin, because maybe hot treif landed on it. Now, obviously, like you mentioned, v'davka lechatchila, that it's only a din lechatchila. But because, like you said, rov tashmisha, like you're a Moshe. Aval b'di'evid, ein lachush l'kol zeh. But b'di'evid, everything's okay. Now, the Taz just points out, careful how you read, everything's okay. It's not going on the entire Shulchan Aruch, it's not going on the entire Seif, it's b'di'evid, you don't have to worry about the chumras that are just mentioned in the Ramah itself. Now, if you have kalim that are made of clay, pottery, cheres, with cold, generally they're only used with cold, and you can't be mekayim this minhag of hagala. So then it's okay, it's called b'di'evid, v'sagile b'merika ushtifa heitev, and all you have to do is clean it out really well. Because again, we're talking about dishes that you can't kasher, and we're talking about dishes that mistama were only used for cold. It's the type of dish that's only used for cold. Umuter litain bo acharkach, and then, so therefore, you're allowed to use it, clean it. It's mutter to use, and you're even allowed to use it for afilu dvarim charifim kechometz. You can put vinegar in there. It never really became treif, is the whole assumption. So therefore, you're allowed to put in there even chometz or onions, whatever things that are you called charif, v'kol shekin dvarim kashim ketavlin, and certainly dry, sharp items, sharp spices. That's also going to be okay. What do you want to just point out? Right, so for the tabletops, the minhag is to at least pour hot water. Obviously, you can't take a whole table and put it in, and put it into a hot pot with boiling hot water. It won't fit. So the minhag in the shach points out, when you buy it, if it's used, clean it and pour on it boiling hot water, or yad tzeledepo, and that'll work. Right. The shach points out, we're also worried about maybe they have treif wine in those dishes that we mentioned, the lechatchila you should kasher, because it could also be in there for 24 hours, and then it also has a din of kavush. Okay, fine. Let's get to Vav. Seif Vav. Klei matechot. Afa pi sheyesh omrim shenishtamesh bo iser b'miktzato ne'esar kulo. So we learned that there is an opinion that if you only heat up one end of the kli, let's say one end of your spoon, and only one end of it gets hot enough and it absorbs iser. So then there's an opinion that says now the entire spoon is treif. Mishum decham mikzato cham kulo. That if part of it gets hot, the din is that the rest of it gets hot, and we really don't know where it ends. So we just say the heat and the iser travels throughout the entire kli. So by there, lechumra, there is such a machlokas. But when it comes to kashering it, there's no machlokas. You have to go all the way. There's no way to kasher it unless you kasher all of it. We don't say, if you just kasher one end, it'll kasher the other end. But keep listening. There is a kula here. So we say beinan hagala beinan libun. Whether you have to kasher through hagala or libun, it doesn't matter. If the whole thing is treif, you have to kasher the whole thing. Because the Rama points out, v'davka im nishtamish bekulo. The only time you have to kasher the entire spoon is if the entire spoon became hot on both sides and absorbed the isser. But the Rama says, really, if you know only one end of the spoon ever touched isser and ever became hot, we say kivolo kachpoto. The only part of the spoon you have to kasher is the end that became treif. But the Shach points out. Let me just point out the Shach. The Shach points out that it's enough to kasher the end that became treif, but this is only b'diavad. L'chadchila, if one end of the spoon or the entire spoon became treif, you have to kasher the entire spoon. It makes no difference. Anytime you come to kasher any dish, you have to kasher the entire dish. And we also learn sometimes when you have no choice and you can't, the whole thing doesn't fit to kasher, you could technically, when necessary, kasher in two sides separately. You first do one side, then you do the other. Right? It doesn't work by tefillas kelim, but it does work for hechsher when necessary. Good? Okay. Zayin. Sakin, yashan, ben gadol, ben katan, hanikach me'agoy. You get a knife, big or small, from a goy. Now, you want to use it. Im ba lishtamish ba b'tzonein. Let's say, so we know, obviously, if it's for hot, you have to clean it properly. We're going to explain, and then you kasher. Let's say you want to just use it for cold, and we're assuming, okay, let's keep going. So, im ein ba gumot. Let's say there's no all these nicks and grooves up and down. So then it's if it's straight and smooth. Noatza asara pe'amim bekarka kasha. We learned before about this. What you need to do is you take it and you stab it 10 times onto hard earth. V'tzarich kol shekol niitza v'niitza tiye bekarka kasha. So it has to be on hard dirt each time. It can't be very soft. So therefore, you're going to do it in 10 different spots. Don't re-hit it into the exact same spot because you just made it soft by hitting it the first time. So 10 different spots. And so even if it's a davar charif, now you want to cut radishes and onions, it's mutter. Okay. Because you did an itza and everything is cold. Okay. So, and we learned also that if you're doing hashchaza, if you're gonna, here, let's keep reading, we're gonna see. Haga, v'lishtamish bo bekvius lagara mishar kli, shenoagim lahagel afilo datzonin. The Rama points out, this is a one-off again, because on the kvius, to keep in your kitchen, we don't keep dishes that need to be kashered for hot. So in other words, even though, so if you're gonna buy it, you can't use knife. You can kasher it, but you shouldn't use it permanently for your part of knife for onions and radishes until you also kasher it from the treif. V'im yesh ba gumot o sherotze lachtoch ba chamim o lishchot ba, or you want to shacht with it, so you want to use it with hot, or there are some gumos in there. What do? So you have to. Now you do libun on it, and then that'll work. O mashchiza v'mashchezet shel nefachim heitev al penei kula. Or you do hashchaza. You not sand it down. What's it called? You sharpen your knife with a knife sharpener, and you're going to end up right. Or you take your stone and you smooth it down. So you're going to be removing the ends of it, and that works. Yeah, a professional. Not obvious. I'm not sure if it matters. Okay. Look in the so the Shach points out. Wait a second. Here, let me finish the Rama first. Haga v'yesh omrim dashchaza lo mahani rak lachtoch batzonen, and some say, wait a second. Hashchaza, when you remove the very top little layer, very thin layer of metal, every time you sharpen it, it only helps for cutting. Davar charif, it helps for that. and to clean it from any shuman or anything like that. Avalolin chamin, but it doesn't help for heat because it doesn't go all the way through the knife. It's only on the surface. V'hachi nahug lechatchila, and that's the custom lechatchila. So if you're going to use it, if you want to use it permanently or for hot, you should first do hashchaza and then hagala, or then do libun. Im. Here, I'll read a bit more of the Ramah. I'll just point out the Shach afterwards. Lechatchila v'im lo yuchal v'lavin asakin heitev mishum akata yilabno. But if yilabno v'galeno acharkach, if you can't properly burn it because you're going to end up burning the handle if it's made of wood or melting it, so you do that as much as you can that won't damage the knife, and then you do hagala afterwards, and then so you get both. Im lavno v'lo higilo, afilu yesh bo gumot, o higilo v'lo lavno, v'ein bo gimot v'chatach bo, ma'achal cham lo ne'esar, afilu asakin ben yomo. But bediavet, if you just do libun without doing any hagala, or even if there are gumot, but you did libun, so that helps, or you do hagala and you didn't do libno, and there's no gumot, because so then the hagala got in there, and then you cut with it, and you're not going to have food get stuck into those crevices, but there's no gumot. So then if you just did hagala, even if it's hot, even if it's a ben yomo, that will work, at least on a level of bediavad. Right. So the Shach says similar, that as long as you do hashchaza, when you sharpen the knife, that's even better than doing just hagala. And so he says that it will work bediavad. So again, lechatchila, we do libun, or we do hashchaza, and libun, or hagala, depending on the status of your knife, right, how smooth it is. But, okay. The Shach just goes on to a little bit of a side issue, and he points out, we touched upon this as well, that when you do hagalas kelim, the pot that you're doing it into needs to be shishim, the water needs to be shishim of the dishes, if it's going to be a ben yomo. And if you have each pot, let's say you want to do two spoons, whatever it is, and you kasher in a pot of water that's boiling, if one spoon is going to be batal to shishim of the water, it's a big pot, and so it's 60 times the volume of that spoon, so it works. But if you're going to do spoon after spoon, and the 2 spoons, well, the pot's not 60 times 2 spoons, so then he points out it's a machlokas, and he's Likar Alacha, he says he's machmer, because the Isser, since we're talking about a ben yomo, the Isser goes into the water, and then it adds, and then it stays in the water, it doesn't disappear. So the first one opinion says it does, and the other opinion says it doesn't, and so therefore it adds up, and then when you put your second spoon, it's no longer batal b'shishim, so that's a real problem. So he says, what about on, right before, we're getting close to Pesach, so how do you kosher dishes before Pesach? If when people come, they come with their dishes, one after another. By the end of the day, you have for sure more dishes went through in your boiling pot of water than was in there. Certainly, there's no batal b'shishim when you add them all up. So he points out, of course, because you only kosher dishes that are not a ben yomo. It's very important that when you kosher your dishes for Pesach, you make sure that they're not a ben yomo before you bring it to them, or at least some say if you put soap in the water, that'll make it pagum. Right? That's why it's not an eno ben yomo makes it so it's a flavor of pagum, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. Let's just finish the Ramah. Pagum we're going to review all about that again in the next siman. Mihu. We read this. We read this part. V'im hishchizo b'mashchezet heitev The kol makom umagilo, and the Ramah says, but if it's relatively smooth knife, right, and you do hashchaza all over, and then you do hagala afterwards. Mahani afil lechatchila. So that's lechatchila kamo libun. If it's just as good as doing libun in yuchal in kota gumot sheba. If there's no crevices in there that's not being cleaned, serrated knives, those are also difficult, impossible just to do hashchaza. It's not straight and smooth. So lechatchila you do libun or hashchaza and hagala. Good? Yeah.